Wendy, ¿nos oyes?
Ya,
¿Ya nos oyen?
ya.
Ok, no les escuchamos a ustedes.
Ah, ¿no nos escuchan?
¿Me necesitan aquí o no?
Si quieres
No
estar,
les
está bien.
escuchamos. Ok, ya. Go ahead.
Sí, si quieres estar, está bien.
No, si quieres, me voy. Nada más espera porque no llegamos.
Sigue haciendo.
Ya estamos al aire.
So, ¿quieren que me vaya o me voy? O digo, ¿me vaya o me quedo?
¿Quieres
Okay,
quedarte?
do
Está
I leave
bien.
or do I leave?
¿O
¿Ah?
tienes algo que hacer?
You want me- No, y sí, pero
¿No te quieres quedar?
lo que tú quieras. ¿Qué quieres
Vamos a
te
hacerlo
ayudo?
entre las dos.
Ok.
¿Está bien?
Okay, all right. I'm staying. Okay.
We want you to be here.
Okay, I'll stay then.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much to be here in this program from the Resistencia Reporta. So this evening we have a really nice guest. So we're really happy to be with you. So thank you so much to Becca Shaki, Michael Ishii. They are from an organization named Tsuru. Tsuru is a really good alliance of the Resistencia. But for the people who, and Bashur, we have our founder, Maru Mora, here. Thank you for being here, all of yours. So I would like to start asking to Michael, for the people who don't know what is Tsuru, can you please explain what is the goal of this organization and when it started?
Sure. Wendy, thank you so much for the invitation to be here and be in community with you and your audience. My name is Michael Ishii, and I'm one of the co-founders and organizers at Tsuru for Solidarity. And in Japanese, Tsuru means crane. And in our culture, the crane is the creature of transformation. And when you are ill or you have a very big challenge, if you fold 1,000 cranes out of paper, then heaven will grant you a wish. So in 2019, really back in 2016, when President Obama opened large detention facilities for children and families in Texas, we started to take note of it here in the United States. And when I say we, I mean people of Japanese ancestry. Because during World War II, my mother, who was 10 years old, her entire family, and all of the Japanese immigrants and Japanese American citizens on the west coast of the United States were forcibly rounded up and taken by gunpoint to detention sites in the inland parts of the country, and this had tremendous consequences for many generations of our community. We're still trying to heal really the psychological trauma from what happened at that time. And so when we saw President Obama open these large facilities in Texas, we were deeply alarmed. And then when President Trump enacted the zero tolerance policy, and he was literally taking children, snatching them from the arms of their parents, and then deporting the parents and putting the children in cages, that was when our elders who had been children in the US concentration camps during World War II said, enough is enough. This is not okay. We know what this is because we've experienced it as a community. And so we came together and we formed a protest movement that began going to US detention sites to protest. And fast forward 4.5 years later, one of the amazing partnerships that we've been very fortunate to have is with Resistencia and the incredible leaders, of course, including the amazing Maru, who is here with us today. We consider the work we get to do to shut down NWDC with you, Wendy, and others a gift to us, because what we have found is that in having an opportunity to come stand at the fences, to work side by side with leaders like yourself, is actually healing our multi-generational trauma. It has helped us reclaim our voice of resistance that was almost completely destroyed by the US government, who really went after our community and pitted us against each other internally and really fractured us and destroyed our voice of resistance. So the opportunity to stand alongside with you all and to fight to prevent them from recycling the same sites they used for our people on immigrants today has been really important for us. And that's why we're showing up today. And we're just so thankful that we have had a chance in this last week to commemorate the 82nd anniversary of our forced removal and incarceration, but to get to do it with Resistencia and you all.
So thank you so much, Mike. Maru or Becca, and you had a big event in Piala yesterday, and I would like to know, and for our audience, I think they would like to know what is happening in Piala and why in Piala, who is really close to Tacoma.
Yeah, so the Puyallup Fairgrounds is the site where Japanese Americans, a lot of them from Seattle, were forcibly removed to 82 years ago. And so when President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the executive order 9066 calling for the forced removal and mass incarceration of people of Japanese ancestry on the West Coast, they made this declaration and they didn't even have places where we could go yet. And so a few months later, when they enforced the executive order and began moving people from their homes, they had to put us in temporary what they called assembly centers, right? But were really often repurposed fairgrounds and other sites where they could put a large number of people. It was 125,000 Japanese Americans who were incarcerated during World War II, and so there were tens of thousands of people who were removed from Seattle at the time, and so a large number were moved to the Puyallup Fairgrounds, where they were, set up shelters in the horse stalls and other locations on the fairgrounds. And so, as you know, the fairgrounds at Puyallup are very close by to the Northwest Detention Center, right? About a mile away from the Northwest Detention Center. And so, in honor of the 82nd anniversary of that executive order, we held a program at the Puyallup Fairgrounds that then moved to the detention center to honor our history and remember our history, but also to draw the connections between the history of forced removal and incarceration of Japanese Americans and the current detention of immigrants and asylum seekers at the Northwest Detention Center.
Yes, that's great. And many people don't know about the history, different histories who are happening in this area in Tacoma. So it's really sad. It's not only this community. There are many communities who are suffering with this situation in the Tacoma Detention Center. I think, Maru, can you tell us about how do you feel like to be working with this amazing team, and what's happening? What are the goals for the Tacoma Detention Center with all these activities?
Yeah, it's great to have Mike and Becca, all the way from New York, by the way.
Yeah. Welcome.
They came to spend time with us, and we're really grateful. Of course, many people that follow Resistencia know very well Stan Shikuma, that is really our local Tsuru person, and also extraordinary organizer with La Resistencia. I think that every time people see Resistencia and they see Stan, They probably think Resistencia and they don't think Tsuru, but he's actually part of Tsuru National. And so, all the years that I've been doing this work, even prior Resistencia, I've been doing immigration justice for over 2 decades now. And for many years, I would be very careful on who approach our work, right? Especially when they're not immigrants themselves, or they're not, they haven't experienced what we experience, or even if they're people of color, but they have privilege that we don't have. And so in our experience, and I say our because I'm not the only one, I have this conversation with many, many other organizers across the country, is that we have to be very careful because I would say the vast majority of times that we get approached by people to work with us is not because they really want to have a long-term commitment. It's usually because they want a one-time thing, one big event, one grant that they have to fulfill, the photo, literally they want to take a picture with us. They want to come and work with us for a bit and then move to the next issue and then just put in the curriculum, oh, I work with Resistencia, right? I do have experience working with directly impacted people and whatever they want to name us, whatever the new terminology is that makes you very, down with the movement. And so not only that, but we also face a lot of times where people want to come and tell us what to do and how to do it. They question our methods, or they want to know what are we doing. Like we have to give them an explanation and reports of how we came to this conclusion in our strategies and so on and so forth. That has not been the experience at all with Tsuru for Solidarity whatsoever. They've been extremely, extremely respectful of our movement. And I think it's been easy because they understand what we're going through, right? They said it again and again. We were there, but they didn't have allies. They didn't have people outside the Puyallup Fairgrounds where people were being imprisoned. They didn't have anybody coming and protesting or fighting that detention and risking themselves, for arrest to get them out. People were not on the streets chanting. There was no news really on their favor. It was all about against Japanese. Being Japanese in the early 40s was wrong. And so people just were like, okay, it's bad to be Japanese. They have to be in prison. See you, goodbye. And I'm not saying there was no resistance, because I've learned throughout the years more and more, like you said, Wendy, most people don't know. We don't know, really. We know very little. And that's why it's so important to not only follow their work, but also learn history. And so, for example, yesterday we did the Puyallup action, right? But the idea was, okay, Puyallup is about the history. Now let's go and talk about what's happening right now. And so right after Puyallup, we went to the detention center. And that's how I see Tsuru working is, yes, this happened, but it's happening right now. So let's take action right now. Let's not only talk about what happened before and how we feel about it, but let's do something about it right now that has direct impact. And so we went to the detention center. We had an incredible action. It was beautiful. And we can talk more about it in a second, but I wanted to show, I have a cake, but I didn't bring the cake. So somebody gave me a cake yesterday, and it came on its case and everything.
You ate the cake.
I ate the cake. No, I ate a little bit of it. I did try it. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm not gonna eat it by myself. But it was chocolate cake, so it was really good. And I know people know that I like chocolate. And if people didn't know, yes, I like chocolate. So if you want to give me chocolate, I'm good with it. But anyway, this person, Maria Abo, came and gave me this cake and said, I want to tell you that my family was in the Puyallup Fairgrounds, and we were detained. And so there was a young person that gave us a gift. It was the friend of one of my relatives there. And they came to bring us cake, and they passed it through the barbed wire, right? And so she attached the note of the history of that event to the cake, plus some tsurus, origami tsurus to the cake. And so when she gave me this, she said, you know, we want to give back. We want to, you know, commemorate that. But now that we're here, we're going to give cake to someone detained. But, you know, it's not possible. We all know that GONIs don't allow us to bring anything to people detained, especially not food. And so we kept the cake. But I think it was an example of who knew that this person that gave the cake, their action meant so much that after all these years, in this family's history is still live, you know, it's alive, and they want now to replicate that somehow, right? And we couldn't send the cake inside, but we were outside and they knew we were outside. People in detention knew we were outside because we were loud. We had the taiko drums, right? We had shakers that made a lot of noise and whistles, and we had the mic with big speakers, you name it, right? So we did a video call with some people detained in Unit B3, and we even passed around the laptop for them to see the crowd outside. So the cake is a very symbolic thing that again, we couldn't replicate the same action, but we replicate something even better, which is having Tsuru there, bringing all these people saying, no, never again. We don't want this to repeat, right? And so we're going to fight so it doesn't repeat. And that's the difference, that Tsuru has been with us for years now, and they're going nowhere. They know it very well that we're going to ask them for more yet. And that's the biggest difference. We have a lot of great allies. I'm not saying that we don't have them, but they happen to be people like us, right? Like you and I, Wendy, like people that are Latinx, or, you know, they're immigrants, they have the experience. And they have privilege, and they might not face detention anymore, but we have not seen that level of commitment from other communities that are not facing detention right now, and they have a lot of privilege in comparison to the rest of us. So that's why for us the collaboration and the allyship and the relationship with Tsuru is extremely, extremely important, and is one to highlight every time we can.
Yes, I think that is super important for all the movements, though, to be respectful each one with other. So because we have like an experience of people who want to be a little bit protagonist and to be trying to tell us, any movement, Black movement, and people from Tsuru, people from Resistance, what we have to do. And we don't let anybody to tell us what we have to do, because we know our work. So this is super important. Is why we're glad to be working with Tsuru, because they respect each other is super important. But also, I would like to ask, approaching that are you here? So days ago, you have an action in a federal building. So one of the questions was for the people who was in front the line is why are you here? And we noticed was some personal attached for each other. So, and I asked to a specific Becca, and why you was there?
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question. And yeah, I think, I mean, I was there for my grandmother. Very, very clearly. My grandmother grew up in Seattle, and she and her whole family were incarcerated during World War II. Her father was arrested on the day of the bombings in Pearl Harbor by the FBI. So our community was already under surveillance before the bombings of Pearl Harbor, and they already had a list of our community leaders. And so they arrested all of our, a lot of our community leaders, anyone who led a community organization. They arrested Buddhist priests, Japanese language teachers, martial arts teachers, and anyone they thought that could lead a resistance to what they were planning down the road for our community. And so she was 14 at the time, and that was when her family was ripped apart. And they stayed separated. They never lived together as a family again. And so I never grew up in Seattle. My family never returned to Seattle after the incarceration. And so I personally, and I think I can speak for all of the other folks who were also willing to get arrested or to risk arrest, that, I'm furious. I'm furious that the federal government is yet again going into communities, arresting people, separating families, incarcerating immigrants. The same rhetoric that was used to justify the mass arrests on December 7th in 1941 was that, our community couldn't be trusted, that we would never really be Americans, that, that we were a threat to the economy of the United States. And these same kind of things are being said about immigrants today, right? The same rhetoric, the same false justification is being used today to target immigrants. And it's really unacceptable, right? The reason that we were outside of the federal building is that Senator Murray is the senator of Washington State, is the chair of the Appropriations Committee in the Senate. And that means that they are in charge of setting the budget for the federal government. So that includes the money, our taxpayer money, that goes to fund the Northwest Detention Center, that goes to ICE, that goes to now GEO Group, right, this private company, to detain people, to profit off of the incarceration of immigrants and asylum seekers. And so we were there to tell her, like, we don't want our taxpayer money to be used this way. We want places like Northwest Detention Center to be shut down. We want that money to go to schools and to libraries, to go to fix our roads, to go towards healthcare and making sure that people are well, to taking care of children. We want these life-giving, life-affirming things to be what our tax money goes towards, and not the incarceration of people. And, I think one thing that I had in my mind when I was outside of the federal building is all the things that my grandmother used to tell me about what it was like to be in detention. When I went back to the site where she was taken to from Seattle, which is in Tule Lake, California, she warned me, oh, you should bring water because the water there is really, really bad. It's undrinkable. You don't want to drink the water there. And I was like, there's not a prison camp there anymore. We'll have water. We'll be okay. But that was what she remembered over 70 years later, was how undrinkable the water was. And then to hear that people inside of Northwest Detention Center are going on hunger strike because the food is unedible, right? Like these exact, very, very similar things that our families experienced and were traumatized by are what people are experiencing now is infuriating. It's infuriating and it's unacceptable. And so I think as a U.S. citizen, as someone who was born and raised here, and knows what this government, what our government can do, that is why I wanted to be outside of the federal building and really call on our government to do better this time. We had 80 years to learn.
Wow.
We can do better.
Wow, thank you so much to be sharing that history with us. We have a lot of respect for that part of our history, and for all your family to be starting and to be fighting until now with the new generation. They should be really proud of you. We are too. And for Mike, I noticed during the action that people have some documents holding in the neck. Can you tell us what what is the meaningful?
Yeah, sure. Well, when Tsuru goes into direct actions, one of the elements that we always try to use is sort of like using creative elements of art that are also healing, but also have a lot of sort of like what I would say talismanic or power, which is they are containers that hold the key or life force of transformation. So, for instance, the tags that you saw were replicas of the identification tags that were pinned to every person who was put in the concentration camps during World War II. So, like my mother and her family, everyone had to wear that tag as they were removed from Seattle. And each family was given a number. So they wrote your family's identification number on your tag. And so, the way that they used language to dehumanize us was, and they still do this for immigrants. They called the immigrant an alien, and they referred to us as aliens at that time. Or if you had a citizenship at that time, they called you a non-alien. You weren't a citizen, you were a non-alien. So we were aliens and non-aliens. And we were assigned numbers. Like they didn't put your name on there, you became a number. And so this was just another way that they dehumanize people. But what we've done is we've taken the image of that tag and we've turned it we've repurposed it and used it as a sign of like the power of our lived experience, and that we will not forget what we went through, but we will stand in a new way and repurpose that for liberation and freedom. So also, if you notice, there were people wearing red coats made of cotton. These are Japanese garments that peasants would wear. And we wore red ones because red is a color of transformation. Like in Buddhist and Taoist Eastern philosophy, we say red is the color of the heart, and the heart contains fire, and fire transforms the universe. So this is the color of heart fire or heart chi, heart ki. And on the backs of the red coats, we put the circle and the logo of the crane in the middle, which is our symbol for Tsuru. But like the rays of the sun going out, we asked people to write the names of their family members and their ancestors who were incarcerated, who they wanted to remember. And we did this as part of the sort of training for people who were going to be arrested, to create this garment that has the symbols of transformation, but also the names of the ancestors. And people, when they wrote them, just like when people fold the cranes for us that we hang on the fences of detention sites, they fold into these objects love, care, and prayers for transformation. So on the Tsuru that were hung on the fences at the detention sites, like the first time we did that, we said, fold 10,000 of these. And we thought that was more than anyone would ever fold. And we said 10,000 because in Eastern philosophy, 10,000, the 10,000 things means more than you can count. It means an infinite number. So we said, we asked for 10,000 cranes, and our community folded 30,000 cranes in 2 weeks and sent them to us. And from the Seattle Tacoma area, there were like 13,000 cranes were folded in the temples, in the churches, in the community centers, by families and children in the language schools, and they sent them to us, and we hung them in Texas at Dilley, and where they were holding families. And we hang them at Northwest Detention Center also. They were there yesterday. And those are prayers that are folded by people. They're very powerful because a talisman is an object that holds the intention of somebody. So on the coats that we made for the federal building was the power of ancestral energy. And this circle is because in feudal Japan, ancient Japan, when there were peasants and there were lords, and the lords owned the land and they were very oppressive to the peasants who had nothing except rice. They were rice farmers. So when they revolted, the lords would send their soldiers in to punish and kill the leaders. But actually, what would happen to defend themselves, the peasants would sit in a circle with their feet facing inward, so that when the soldiers walked around them, they couldn't tell who the leader was. They didn't stand out. So the circle was the protection of people. And so that's why we used the circle on our coats and on our logo. And the rays going out, the names are the calling of the ancestors. So we think of those coats that we had our people wear as protective garments. And that's just another example of like the tags of sort of how we're using our culture and art and our history of resistance as part of the work that we do when we show up in direct actions.
Wow, that is beautiful to know. Thank you for letting us to know all this cultural symbolism is super important for us. And also, I would like to ask, why Tsuru decided to take the campaign of the resistance to take away the Tacoma Detention Center?
Well, we started out in Texas because of our, we're a group whose families were separated, right, by World War II detention. And when we stopped, we started as a protest, and this protest grew very quickly then it became a national organization. But in that time, what we began to understand was that there is a repetition of history in the United States, that over and over again, they have targeted immigrants, people of color, and indigenous people with the same thing, which is forced roundups, mass incarcerations, removal from communities, separating our families from each other, sometimes stealing our children, and then deporting people. And of course, all sorts of violence in all of that. If the mortar between the bricks is violence, then that's what they do. They actually murder and they kill people all the time. I mean, what we're witnessing going on inside of NWDC right now, that kind of brutality, that's exactly what we've seen over and over again. They do it over. We witnessed it yesterday when the gentleman who's being incarcerated, he spoke on the tablet to us, and the guards were threatening him with retaliation and saying they were going to take away his tablets for speaking to us. That's just one small example of that kind of violence. There's always the threat. We're going to remove your liberties. We're going to physically harm you. We're going to psychologically harm you. We will prevent you ever from seeing your people or your family again. It's always that threat of violence in all its different forms. And we've seen it over and over again. So as Tsuru evolved and as a protest movement and understood that, then we thought, well, we need to show up not only in the child and family space, because that's really how we were impacted, but we also understood that we need to show up in the places where we were removed. And one of our co-founders, Satsuki Ina, said to the guards at Fort Sill when he said, you have to leave Fort Sill's army base because we were blocking the gate. And she said, we've been removed too many times, we're not leaving.
Oh.
And that's why we come back to NWDC. We were removed. We are not leaving. We're going to free everyone inside, free them all.
Oh, thank you so much. So this is really attached with the campaign of Free Them All. So this is too important. And I would like to ask to Maru, so how did you feel yesterday after the people who was inside the Tacoma Detention Center saw all this protest? How do yours feel about?
Well, it's like conflicted feelings, right? Because everybody knows my level of outrage. I'm not afraid of sharing how I feel about all of this, and that's why I've been doing this work for so long. I really start feeling so angry as I'm driving towards the detention center. That place, I can tell where that place is as I'm driving. Even when I'm flying and I'm flying back to Seattle or leaving Seattle, I can even identify that damn place, from above. I'm like, oh, there it is. And so, but when I get there and I see all the people that are there with us to fight back, and then we get those calls from people in detention, like that anger goes away and it fills my heart with so much hope and the realization that we're doing the right thing because they're organizing inside and we have to organize outside. I've always said it. The formula is that we both have to organize. People in detention by themselves, if they organize and nobody's outside, then we're repairing history on our own by not being there for people in detention, right? And it would be wrong of us organizing outside without the leadership of those inside, because then it will show just that protagonism that you were talking about, right? A level of arrogance that many of us have, and we want to get rid of. And so when the call came through, and it was not just one guy, but several, because one of the things that the detention center is known for is for hiding things, right? So when the companies that obviously benefit from this detention center, and all detention centers in the country benefit from, is the money, right? And so that's why the detention of immigrants now is huge, because it's a business, it's a big enterprise. And so there's a company called Telmate that benefits from the communications. So before, they used to have only phone calls, and then they added emails, and actually was phone calls was Telmate, and then emails was JPay, and then they changed it, and Telmate got the contract for emails, and then later they added video calls. And so when the video calls began, which we have to pay for everything, I remember taking screenshots because we could see the background, right? But now they added this feature that now we all have, which is to blur the background. And so now when there's more than one person coming into the screen, sometimes we can't see them, right? We can't see very well. We can see only one person at a time, but you can still see that there are people around. And so when the first guy came to the screen, and then I could see others in the background, I was like, wow, great. So it's the entire unit that knows about this. And yes, we could hear like some yelling happening. And so they told us, oh, a geo guard is saying that if we continue talking to you, they're going to take away our tablets. And I was like, oh, let's rush the call before this happens. But I could tell that, and maybe everybody else in the audience could tell, that they were fighting back. They were yelling back. They were the geo guard was yelling at them, and they were yelling back at the guard. And we were able to keep, for some time, the video call. So that's like real organizing. That's real resistance right there and there. Everybody that were outside, they were witness of retaliation happening immediately, and that resistance, right? That, Satsuki, we've been removed too many times. We're not going anywhere. That kind of, okay, you're trying to isolate me again, but you won't. I'll fight, so people know what's going on. People should hear us. People will know what you are doing to us right now, plus everything else that is happening. So that really, takes over my original rage. And so it makes me think we're doing the right thing. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing, but we need more people, right? So it was great to have, I don't know how many people were there, but honestly, when I moved the laptop, so the guys in the unit that we were video calling with could see everyone, as I was moving the laptop, I was like, oh, wow, there's more people than I thought, because I was just in one part of the canopy and I couldn't see everyone. But once I approached the crowd, I was like, wow, this is a big crowd. This is great. And my feeling was, if I feel like, oh, this is great, they're gonna feel even better, because they asked us for this video call. They knew this was coming. We told them it was coming, but they also read it in the papers. Tsuru has been having great media coverage, and it's been in a lot of media outlets. It was on even like Fox News Even they announced it, right? The Tacoma News Tribune announced it. Like they were reading the paper, the local paper, the Tacoma News Tribune, and they messaged us and told us, we want to be on a video call with you when everybody comes. So this is the result of many, many years of organizing, but doing it the right way. Right? Again, doing it the respectful way, doing it because we believe in this, because we want this to end. I said many, many times that for me, the biggest victory would be not only the shutdown of the detention center, but when Resistencia is not needed anymore. Like when we can just pack and do something else. Maybe I don't know, maybe we all decide that we're going to have a dancing club or karaoke place for Wendy. I don't know. It would be great to just say, now we're going to dedicate our time to fulfill happiness for those that were detained, fight for reparations and make sure that people come together. And instead of coming together to fight for release, now we come together to celebrate that we're finally together. So that's the level of happiness that I felt at the end of the demonstration yesterday. It was, I'm looking forward to that moment when we just come together and, dance on the ruins of the detention center and we say we're finally together, and now we're making ICE pay every single cent that they took back to everyone that was detained. That would be a wonderful time.
Yes, and also our taxes. We don't like the use in there. So there was also one important element who was yesterday and was amazing, was organizing for other people. It's a big team, and especially Margie, she loved the noise and the drums too. So all that elements, so the people who is inside the Tacoma Detention Center can to hear. So, but it's beautiful. The cultures are always amazing. But also, I would like to ask to you both. So, first, what Tsuru means? Because many people don't know. And can you explain what Tsuru means?
Yeah. Tsuru is the Japanese word for crane, like the folded paper crane. And, we first, as Mike was saying, when we first decided we were going to go to a detention center, this detention center in Texas, in Dilley, Texas, similarly was 40 miles down the road from where some of our founding elders were incarcerated with their families in Crystal City. And so when we were going down there, we heard from the local organization Grassroots Leadership in Texas, an incredible partner, and really helped found us as an organization. They had been organizing with folks who were inside and supporting families that were detained at Dilley. And so they told us, well, we can have a protest, but the fence is really far away from the detention center. They have a lot of space in Texas, so they, intentionally put the outside fence really very, very far away. And so, hundreds of feet away. And so we kept asking ourselves, well, what is it that we could do? How would we be able to let people who are inside actually know that we were there, right? We didn't have the video calls at the time, but we kept thinking well, what would we have wanted, right? What would we have wanted to know that there was somebody on the outside? I was thinking about my grandma, how would she have known, that there were people on the outside fighting for her? And so we thought that if we had, not just one Tsuru, not just one paper crane, but thousands of paper cranes, that brightly colored paper, some of that paper is metallic, it can catch the light. If we covered the whole fence, right, with cranes, that maybe they would catch a glint of red or green or blue, something that would indicate to them, oh, there's something going on out there, right? And that's when we also started talking about bringing taiko. So having really, really loud drums so that they could, and maybe they couldn't see us out there, but they could hear us. They could hear the drums. And one story I think about in connection to that is my grandfather's sister, who was 10 when she was incarcerated. She talked about how she loved taiko drums, and growing up in a Japanese community, a Japanese farming community in California, and they would have taiko drums at our festivals. And so she loved the sound of taiko drums. And she said later, when we took her to a festival in Washington, D.C. and played her, there was taiko drums. She's like, oh, I really love taiko drums. It was so quiet when we were in camp. There were no drums.
Oh.
So quiet. And so, we really wanted to bring the full force of our community, the full voice of our community as we could, to break through that silence, the silence of how it feels to be incarcerated, and the silence around the incarceration of immigrants in this country. And so that's what Tsuru means to me.
Thank you so much. Shut down that detention center.
Yes.
And I would like to say thank you so much for each other. So Mike, yes?
Well, just a little more about the taiko drum is that in our creation story from Japan, we say that the goddess Amaterasu, she's the sun goddess, and she created the world. And she became very disappointed with humanity. And so she went inside a mountain, and the world went into darkness. And so her sister came to her and begged her to have mercy on humanity. And she listened, the goddess listened, and she heard the clamoring of humanity. And it was the taiko drum. And so she said, okay, I will give you another chance. And she came back to the world, and she relit the world in her light. And so when Tsuru formed and we went to Texas, to Dilley, to protest, we brought the drums because at that moment we were recognizing we are in a time of darkness, and we must bring the light back into the world. So the drums are really important for us. When we played them yesterday, and you can feel when the drum is played, we say the kodo, like the heartbeat of the child, right? And so this is helping us to remember the fire in our heart, the joy of life, the transformative force of life. And so that's why for us it's so important to sort of pay homage to the goddess who brings light into the world, but also to bring that light into the fight of resistance.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all your work and all your solidarity. So, Maru, do we have other events this week?
Oh, yes, we do.
Yeah.
That's why we also love Tsuru, because they're down with the actions, and that's plural. And so, yeah, tomorrow at 10 a.m., we're going to be at the King County Airport in Seattle, right there on Airport Way, where most people don't know, but every week, at least once a week, deportations are happening. And flights, private companies that have contracts. Again, there's the money trail. Companies that have these contracts with ICE are deporting people, and sometimes they're transporting people back and forth. So we know, all of a sudden we were thinking that maybe 600 to 700 people were detained in the detention center. And we heard through people detained that the number is now actually over 950 people detained. And so we observe those flights every week now since May 2023 that they came back, because we were able to stop them for 4 years, but then they came back. And so now the campaign is relaunching to stop these deportation flights. And so we're coming to King County Airport at 10 a.m. Right there on Airport Way. For those that want to come and join us, we're going to have Tsuru doing a press conference, and we're going to go right outside the company. That is the reason why these flights came back, is because, the ICE doesn't do the flights anymore. When they started back in the day, they actually manage all the flights, but they end up giving contracts to specific corporations. So right now, the corporation that is doing the flights themselves is called Global Crossing. But when they land, they have to be serviced, and that's a different company. And in this case, the base operator of that service is called Signature, and their offices are right there by the main terminal of the King County Airport. So we're gonna be right there outside Signature's offices. We have already been there before. They were not very happy about it. They didn't tell us to leave, but they just said, "Don't come in," and we're like, "We're outside." But we want to make sure that people know, and they should know. They refused those contracts before. Why did they accept it now? And they should end that contract that they have right now to service those flights, regardless of the company that runs the plane themselves. It could be Global Crossing, it could be iAero, it could be anybody else. But as long as the companies on site at the airports refuse to service those, then they don't land. And that's exactly how we stopped them last time. As a matter of fact, when we stopped them back in 2019, April of 2019, ICE had to go around and asking all the airports in the area. They went to Bellingham, they went to Everett, they went down to Thurston. Nobody, no company would say yes to them. They had to go all the way to Yakima, which is 2 hours, far, from NWDC is maybe 2 hours and a half. They had to cross really the mountains, right, to get to Yakima, because only one company decided to say yes to them. So Signature should do that again, because they were one of the many that refused back in 2019. Why did they accept this time? So that's why we're going back. We want to make it impossible for ICE to continue deporting our people. We want to make it really expensive in this case for GEO, because if they go back to Yakima, it will be very expensive for them. And that's really our formula, since Maria Canwell and Patty Murray, our senators, are doing nothing, in the meantime, while they're listening, and we're going to make them do something. But in the meantime, our strategy is, let's make GEO's life impossible here, very, very expensive. We're not going anywhere. We've been here for 10 years. We'll be here as long as needed until they they pack and leave, or Maria Canwell and Patty Murray finally put enough pressure so this contract is deleted. This should be undone. It should be gone. No more money for GEO here in the Northwest Detention Center. So it's an example for other detention centers across the country. So Tuesday, 10 a.m., King County Airport in Seattle on Airport Way South. And there will be more. There will be many, many more to come.
Thank you so much for all this information. We really appreciate it, and thank you for being here. So we hope yours have a good trip, and I hope to see you tomorrow. And thank you for joining with the Resistencia and Tsuru. And I hope that people can attend to this big event tomorrow. So thank you so much, and have a nice day.
Gracias.
Thank you so much for having us. Gracias.
BTRU. Estás escuchando